The NFL was back, baby! And here are a few historical funny facts that you could drop on your next tailgate that'll make people go, wow! He's full of useless knowledge, but damn does he know football.
Black on the tee, black on the jeans, passing a lead, band bags like a crash on the street, freak accident, token that.
From the birthplace of football to Walter Camp to pig bladders and whites only, football has given us some of the dumbest, funniest moments in history, but here are just a few. Because if I tried to tell you all of them, I'd be here for about 9 hours. Sit back, grab a beer, and let's laugh a little about a sport that's been around for over 160 years and doesn't even take the #1 spot. Millions of people around the world every Sunday gather together, watching football, eating wings, drinking beer, and watching their favorite teams rip their heart out like a bad ex. Well, unless you're an Eagles fan. Lately, trust me, there was a lot of bad years, and Philly fans are definitely something special. The only fans in the world that actually had a jail inside their stadium, and for good reason too. As someone who sat in the 700 level, oh, trust me, those bleachers were a lot like Rutgers with nachos. And there were plenty of years that I felt like my heart was ripped out, doused in gas, and set on fire. But Philly fans are something special for sure. Most people say passionate, the most passionate in the world. Or, on the other hand, you could say we're slightly like that OnlyFans stalker that'll sit outside your house with flowers when things are good, or maybe key your car if you leave us unopened for longer than 10 minutes. The old pigskin, and for good reason they named it that. Did you know that the original footballs were actually pig bladders that were inflated with air and wrapped in leather? I mean, nothing says football on a hot summer day when the ball smells like bacon. And I'm sure that's a big reason why there was a lot more fumbles back then, because bacon grease on a football is not the best mix in the world. But that's why we get the oblong shape that we get on a football, because when you fill a pig bladder with air, you don't get a perfect sphere. You get this oblong football shape. So I want to thank all the pigs out there, not only for bacon and sausage, but for the perfect quarterback spiral. And now I know why a lot of Muslims back in the day said football was unholy. I guess running around with a pig ball was just not in their plans. But this is the time of the year where over 30 million people play fantasy football. Nothing like making an imaginary team and screaming at your TV for that one PPR point that beat your buddy down the street. In 1962, Bill Winkenbach, co-owner of the Raiders, invented fantasy football. And unfortunately for old Bill, he won way more fantasy championships than real ones. And I'm sure Bill never made a decision on his NFL team that may or may not have affected his fantasy team. Thank God back then they didn't allow gambling in professional sports, because that never happened. Fantasy football is the only thing that you could lose money, friendships, have a 4-8 season, and still try and brag about it. And do you know where football started? New Jersey. That's right, the armpit of America, as a lot of people say. Oh, where the tolls are super high, the roads look like Ukraine after a Putin hissy fit, and the electric bills nowadays have you questioning every life's decision. But yes, the game we know of today was invented in 1869, and the first game was played between Rutgers and Princeton. And take a look at these guys. Athletes is not the first thing that comes to mind when you see them. Oh no. And look at those uniforms. They look more like a lineup of bakers or a swim team than a football team. You know damn well halftime wasn't Taylor Swift. It was probably more like sourdough samples and folk music, because nothing gets the crowd more revved up than a Ulysses S. Grant speech and a fiddle solo. And if they scored, you know these guys had to have some nifty touchdown celebration. It was actually probably really corny. And by corny, I mean they might have been like husking corn. I doubt they had some choreographed little dances that they did with their whole team. They were probably a little bit more like, I reckon we have scored, my good man. Let's play another foosball. And the fans at that time, they weren't yelling things like, that call is sus, ref. Oh no. They were yelling things like, how came you so? Which meant you're drunk. Which actually sounds a little bit more like something that you'd see on Pornhub than meaning drunk. Every generation has really odd sayings. And the drip that they had, well, let's just say they had a little bit more pockets than players on the field. But hey, those chin curtains and chops, they were damn sexy, weren't they? Thank God that trend died out, right? Imagine if those guys tried to play against an NFL team that we know of today. I'm sure they'd look up at these towering men and, my God, my good man, you were quite large, and your drip is very uncouth. But football has gone through an immense amount of changes, and as you can see, the uniforms and paddings that started in the 1860s have come a long way. And the one thing that the NFL has definitely done an amazing job with is player safety. It's been a focal point for many years, and the helmets, pads, and everything has evolved immensely from when football first started. One of the biggest things that happened to football was Walter Camp in 1880. Walter Camp came along and he actually invented downs and distance. That's why on Sunday you're screaming at your TV when it's 3rd and 12 and your team runs a draw play and gets -3 yards. Thanks, Walter. And as a comedian for a lot of years and someone who worked up at the Howard Stern show for a little bit of time, I know a lot about downs. And without the downs and distance, you never have those scores on your fantasy team. Did you know that football started out as a whites-only league? Nothing like 22 unathletic white men running around on a field. It probably looked a little bit more like a liberal protest with shoulder pads, and honestly, I think they call that pickleball today. But that all changed in 1946 when the Rams signed Kenny Washington and Woody Strode, the first black players that entered the NFL. And thank God, over 400 million people every single year watch American football. And the Super Bowl had over 127 million people watching it. But you know what? We're still not number one. Soccer takes the cake at the number one spot of most fans in the world with over 3 billion fans. And cricket holds the number 2 spot with over 2 billion fans. American football is barely in the top 10. Cricket, basketball, hockey, tennis, all have more fans than American football. And why wouldn't people want to watch cricket? I mean, their uniforms are awfully nifty, and there's nothing like watching basically a baseball game with someone hitting a ball with a 2x4. Thrilling. And I just can't believe the cricket's got over 2 billion fans versus American football that only has 400 million. But here's the kicker. Those cricket players average about $15 an hour versus American football that the players average about $3 million a year. I'm sure that the owners of those cricket teams are not pocketing money like a politician, by no means. Clearly they're treating their players right with that whopping $15 an hour. 400 million people worldwide watch football every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and sometimes on Fridays and Saturdays in the playoffs. It's not quite like it used to be where there was just one day and one network, and now you need to have about 8 different streaming platforms just to watch your teams. But hey, it's fun anyway, isn't it? And last year, over 127 million people watched the Super Bowl between the Eagles and the Chiefs, and the Eagles won the Super Bowl again. Eventually, the NFL started doing the draft, where they would draft young players and young athletes from college into the NFL. One of the craziest players that was ever drafted in 1936, William Shakespeare, was drafted into the NFL by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Oh no, not the playwright, but the guy who trained his dog to catch punts, because the NFL quite didn't have a lot of money to have people on the sidelines like they do today catching balls. How broke was the league that they needed an effing dog to help with drills? I mean, but old William Shakespeare, could you imagine the huddle with him? To pass, not to pass. I'm sure it kept the defense on their toes, that's for sure. The first ever draft pick in the NFL, Jay Berwanger, said, oh no, I'm not playing in the NFL unless you pay me 20 times what the average player is making. Now, you may think that was the dumbest decision of his life, but actually it was the smartest, because old Jay ended up being an extremely wealthy CEO and businessman, and didn't play for $20 a day like everybody else was. And every year in the draft, the last pick of the draft is called Mr. Irrelevant. Only in the NFL do you get a nifty nickname and parade for being the last guy picked. I mean, it's basically saying, we think you're gonna suck, so we'll give you a cool nickname. You know, I wish I was treated that way when I was a kid on the playground, always being picked last, playing football, basketball, hockey, and even with the women. That's short guy problems. It's that, and we can't reach the damn top cabinet. You know, some of the funniest things that have happened in the NFL have been on the field, some of the plays and some of the announcers. And here's just a few. In 1964, old Jim Marshall scooped up a fumble, ran 66 yards to the end zone, scored, spiked the ball, and danced for the crowd like he cured cancer, until he realized he actually ran the wrong way, didn't score a touchdown. He actually scored a safety against his own team. I mean, that boy had worse direction than Joe Biden and Amelia Earhart. In 1982, the Patriots and the Dolphins played in one of the tightest games ever in the history of the NFL. It was a full-on blizzard and 0-0 going into the end of the fourth quarter. And all of a sudden, a tractor shows up and clears a path in the snow for them to kick a field goal. Patriots win the game, and it's the only time in NFL history where John Deere actually won the MVP. Oh, and then you got really cool games like on Thanksgiving. Every year it's tradition where the NFL has Thanksgiving games, and one of the most memorable was when Mark Sanchez rammed himself into the center's butt.
He's going to fumble the football.
Popped the ball out. They fumbled.
Vince Wilfork is going to throw Brandon Moore back into his quarterback.
The Patriots end up scoring, winning the game. Now, that wasn't football. It was a little bit more of the shower kinky stuff that they typically keep in the locker room, but unfortunately this game, it got brought out to the field. But hey, Mark Sanchez had a hell of a career as an announcer. The first game of the year this season, Jalen Carter from the Eagles got caught spitting on Dak Prescott, and it was a huge news thing. Should we suspend him? Shouldn't we suspend him? But some crazier stuff has happened in the NFL. Like Nick Novak, who just whipped it out on the sideline.
But his range is. Well, Novak did hit on a 53-yarder.
And relieved himself. I mean, I know nature calls, but that's not a suspendable offense, whipping it out and showing it to the crowd while you just take a whiz. I mean, that's not a timeout. That's a water break. How about the MVP of the league, Lamar Jackson? Lamar Jackson has some of the most memorable plays on the field, including 2020 when he supposedly had cramps and ran off the field in the fourth quarter into the locker room.
It was over here warming up. He is now in the...
It was like Taco Bell hit and DEFCON 1 was coming. It was more like he had to drop a chalupa than fix his cleats. They said it was cramps, but I got a feeling the turtle was coming out of the shell, we were touching cloth, and he didn't want to have an accident on the field. And the same man once held a sign walking off the field after a game that read, "I eat booty." Now, hopefully, it wasn't the same Taco Bell booty. I mean, bro, it's like he's not running plays, but more like an OnlyFans. And how about the interviews and the announcers? One of the most memorable interviews was from Antonio Cromartie. That boy had 14 kids, and he couldn't remember all their names during the interview. I mean, he was like starting his own two-hand touch league at home. Does he know how to pull out? I mean, bro, you're not raising a family, you're raising an expansion team. One of the craziest things that ever happened in the NFL was in 1985. The Washington Redskins were in the Super Bowl, and the police sent out fake invitations to a Super Bowl party. To who? Criminals that they wanted to arrest. And the majority of these criminals were too stupid to realize they were being duped. So they showed up to the party ready to party. Faces painted, jerseys, foam fingers and all. And as they came into the party, they were quickly escorted to a private room, arrested, and thrown in jail. Nothing like sitting in a cell, looking over at your cellmate going, "What are you in for?" and saying, "I went to a Super Bowl party that I thought was a Super Bowl party." It's not quite the tough stuff that'll keep the soap from dropping. And I'm pretty sure I know who the bottom was. The all-time best, in my mind, will always be John Madden. John Madden not only was the most entertaining, the godfather of football, basically, but he also said some of the funniest stuff on air. But Troy Aikman, when he was announcing a game, said something pretty interesting. One said, "Josh Bynes has been coming all night long, and when he pulls out, it's hard."
Bynes has been coming all night long, but then he pulls out and it's just hard. It's been a while since he's seen a hole that big. He almost didn't know what to do.
Bro, are we watching football or porn? How about when old Dan Deerdorf rattled off his amazing wisdom when he said the team that runs the ball will control the clock unless they don't? Talk about Stephen Hawking wisdom, Dan. But John Madden, the king of obvious, always takes the cake. He would say things like, if the quarterback throws the ball and the receiver catches it, that's a completion. Really, John?
Like, this is a father bucket, this is a mother bucket, and since the last game, they had a baby bucket. They have no idea where we are, who we are, where we're coming from, or who we're throwing to. Joe Montana looks more like Barry Manilow, doesn't he? That kid's going to be a nose tackle. He's going to be a two-gap. Mike gave that a triple pump. I mean, when you get that close and they're supposed to make it, you give a triple pump, pump, pump. When you miss it, you don't give it any pumps. You just take your helmet off. You know, the great thing about being a football player is you don't have to take a shower to go to work.
There it is.
You know, here it is, but see, I mean, he got a little in here and a little up there. Here, but he doesn't have anything here at all. Watch, when you take it off, he doesn't have anything going up in there. But I don't think he's doing a very good... I'd quit.
I mean, do you think he did that all day in real life? Like, he just walked over to people and was like, 2 + 2 = 4, and that's math. So yeah, the NFL gives us touchdowns and Lombardi trophies and Tom Brady face planting trying to reenact a Nick Foles, which was absolutely hilarious.
He's going to throw it to Brady. Oh, and Brady slips in his pocket.
But they've also given us Shakespeare, tractors, and butt fumbles, and an MVP's ass going viral. The NFL is America's greatest sport and biggest punchline at times. Now that's just a few facts and funny moments that the NFL has given us over the years. Please follow me, subscribe for much more, and maybe I'll throw out a few more facts about football next time. Or maybe I'll touch on baseball. But I hope you all win your fantasy leagues, and subscribe to Funny History and watch some more.